more abstract, less easy to follow through on once they get it. But we want them independently pressing first before we add those abstract concepts. We'll talk about that on the next slide though. So when we're looking at our examples of starting buttons, we've got general options like play, or maybe starting more specifically makes sense for your household. So for Adora, my border collie, we started with ball, because ball is life. She still loves her ball button. But for the kittens, I began with a general play so that we could play, with a feather toy, wand sort of toy, chase, fetch, all different sorts of things under the play umbrella. Adora does also have a general play button, but we started with ball because that's what mattered more to her. And just because you start general doesn't mean you can't get more specific, and vice versa. If you start specific with ball, you can always add a play button later. In the kitten's case, we started with eat, pets, and play. And for eat, which, as you heard, Katie is still incredibly motivated by, it was just a general eat. So I could model it while I was eating, while the dogs were eating, for wet food, for kibble, biscuits, treats, training sessions, puzzles, for them to work through, and have to work the food out of different toys. That's what a puzzle is in our household. So I liked having a lot of generalization around it. But then since Katie is so food motivated, it made sense to then get specific. And our general eat button is still on the board, but we also have wet food, kibble, pumpkin, as you heard, which still cracks me up that she's that motivated by pumpkin, but hey, and it's healthy within reason. She was chowing down, but she doesn't make herself sick. So if she presses pumpkin, I try to say yes and follow through whenever possible for her. More outside later. Mom, work now. Mom, work now. Dora. So again, you can start general and then get specific, or vice versa as well. And pet/scritches, brush, that's another really common one. But we've got, question mark here, because depending on what is motivating to your learner, if it's easy for you to say yes to and model, it might be a great option. I've even seen where cat TV, a way to turn on like YouTube videos for a cat, can be motivating, particularly if, they're not ones that go outside, or you don't want to put an outside button down on the board because it might be a challenge. If you live on the 10th floor, it's not going to be easy and convenient for you to model outside immediately. So don't feel pressured to start with it. If your learner, is a cat like mine, like Bernie, it's a minimum of 1 hour if we're going outside to gear him up, supervise him, before he's willing to come back inside. So we didn't start with walk or outside because that was a big commitment. Now, we already had one on the board because of Adora. So once he found that, I just had to commit to, okay, this is what motivates him. It's not easy for me to say yes to, but since it was already down, I went ahead and followed through, and that helped get him to his button breakthrough to the point where he is now. And Bernie is a shoulder presser. They can press however they are comfortable. We'll talk more about this with target training in a couple slides, but let them find their pressing style. Adora is very much a full body presser, front paws, back paws. She'll even breathe and activate with a rib kind of thing for my attention. So let them find their style. There's no right or wrong way. As long as they're not frustrated and you can understand them, that's the most important thing. And I'm going to do a little bit of verbal modeling here for Bernie. Bernie, creak. You can do creak. Creak later. Yes. Mom, work now. Then creak. Yeah, creak, walk later. Creak, walk later. And so being able to talk to them, again, paying attention to what you want to call things in the environment. That's actually the first time he's ever used the creak button. So that's why I was like, oh, I need to acknowledge this, even if I'm not getting up saying yes in the moment, because that would not be fair to you all. But Bernie is advanced enough. Katie is advanced enough. And Bernie's been at it since probably September, realistically since September. He really has come into his own in the last month or so with the buttons. So be patient, build that strong foundation, say yes as much as possible so that you can then tell them, no, all done later, that sort of thing down the line. Now, those are a bit more advanced concepts, right? But once they're independently pressing, having ways to tell them no or later or all done can be really useful. One of the things we found is a best way to teach abstract concepts is by modeling them in opposing pairs to create contrasts to one another. So hence thinking about more and all done being added on the board at the same time, yes and no, now and later, these sorts of things. And when you think about, yes, more outside now, you're taking action with the yes, the more, the now. You're able to tell them more as you're adding more food to their bowl. But something like later, no, all done, nothing's happening. That's very tough to understand, right? The absence of something versus action. So whenever you can pair them and model in opposition, in contrast to one another, that can make it that much clearer for our learners. And it's up to you what pair you pick to start off, and maybe you don't need these until buttons number 10 and 11 or, 20 and 21, whatever it is. They're all individuals. Build your board out based on what they're interested in talking about. You might not need a way to put on the brakes with all done, no, later. Or maybe they're, driving you affectionately crazy with all of their presses, and you do need a way to tell them, all right, not right now, then you might need one of these pairs sooner. And for Adora, I did more and all done because that was how I had talked to her. But I found very quickly thereafter that ball and outside were so motivating for her, and being told all done was so frustrating that wasn't really helpful. For her, actually, now and later was a better choice. So I wound up adding them shortly thereafter because to her, later means yes, just not right now. So, yep, Bernie will walk later, yes. So that way I am able to tell them yes still, but later is obviously pretty abstract. So hence now versus the later. And we can be thinking about emotions in a similar way. A positive emotion like happy can be added at the same time as a negative emotion like mad, sad, frustrated. Safe and concerned are another good pair. Friend and stranger, all different sorts of things like this. Yeah, so Jess, excellent question. I saw a video that mentioned not using food or treat first, but are you saying it's okay to start with either? Yes, most likely. I'm not sure exactly which video you're referring to, but most likely it was outdated, particularly if it came from FluentPet. Our original buttons, the ones that I got 4.5 years ago, came with explicit instructions not to start with food. We were concerned at the time that the learners would think that all the buttons equal food, that they would just become obsessive and only want to press about that. So I started with ball and outside for my Border Collie instead. Guess what is far more motivating for her than food? Ball and outside. So part of what I actually used to calm her down was adding puzzle, a food-related button to give her an activity, a way to focus on something other than just, Mom, play with me outside. Let's go outside right now. Let's go. So giving her other things to talk about was really helpful. So, if you think that your learner is going to be too over the top motivated by food, if they can't even think when food is appearing, or they hear some food related button play a sound and they just lose it, that absolutely might be too much, too exciting, not super conducive for building a strong foundation. But for the majority of our learners, they want to talk about food anyway. It's motivating for them. So giving them a way to talk about it with healthy boundaries, as need be, but a handful of kibble or even, half a cup of kibble could be potentially, 100 yeses throughout the day for them, or just in the evening when you're home, depending on your schedule. So it just tends to be so easy to say yes to food and follow through, that we find that it is a really easy, fun way to start teaching the buttons for our learners. And again, we just want to make sure to have other options down too. But if you are worried about it, no pressure to start with food. Truly, most of them find a way to talk about it anyway. And it's funny, my blind cat, Jasper, she had leukemia. So I started with a food button, despite all of the advice and the literature saying, don't start with food. I was like, you know what? I want her to gain weight. I actually would love for her to become pretty food obsessive. That would be great. Her vets wanted her to gain weight. So let's start with a food button. And the opposite happened. She went from being a feral cat who was so food obsessive, would eat to the point of regurgitation, that once she had a food button that she knew I was going to say yes to, she was able to request 4 or 5, sometimes 6 small meals a day. And those smaller, more frequent meals, it got to the point where she was then leaving food willingly. She stopped regurgitating. It completely revolutionized the relationship that she did have with food as a result. So again, you know your learner in your household best, but overall, I tend to be a big fan of food buttons. Yeah, and especially if you think they already know the words, and not just think, I believe that you know they know. Have at it. Again, and as long as you have 1 or 2, ideally 2 other buttons down that are not food related, they shouldn't think that all of them equal that. You'll have other things ideally that you can say yes to that way. Yeah, and Juliet, great question as well. When do you add family member names and other pet names to the buttons? Yeah, so these are considered abstract as well. Hi, Dora. More outside later. Mom, work more now. I'm sorry. And yes and no buttons tend to get used for our learners giving us feedback. So I get told no when I'm doing a behavior that my learners don't like. Bernie, my goodness, now I'm getting tag teamed. It is a beautiful day. We'll go out more later. So when do you add family member names? With these being abstract, they're not usually the first buttons that we recommend putting down, but they can be really helpful buttons to have sooner rather than later. So for my little mostly blind kitten, Katie, mom as a button was button number 4 for her. Normally I try to wait longer, but she was going over to her food button, her eat button, staring me down and just pressing eat again and again and again while there was food in her bowl. After we had done a training session, there was food in her puzzle. She had every option of food out already, and she's still pressing it and staring me down. And it was because she wanted my attention. She wanted a way to connect. So that was clear to me based on her body language. Okay, we need a name button, at least for mom, sooner rather than later. And I did go ahead and add a mom and Katie button, a Katie button, like very quickly thereafter for her. I waited a lot longer to add Bernie's name button down, but once I did, once he had a solid understanding, he was already using the mom button for attention some. Now that I've added his button, he loves to press it to get my attention as well, to make requests for himself. On average, particularly starting off, I don't find their names as motivating because my theory anyway is that it's implied. If they're pressing outside, they're already requesting it for themselves. So it's less motivating to have their own name at first, I think. But then, once they're getting it, once they're wanting more buttons, more things to talk about, it can be so helpful for them to have a way to reference themselves and think about themselves. Hi, Dora. Mom, work more now. Mom, work more now. We can walk later. This is why Dora is normally created while I'm teaching. I gave you the benefit of the doubt because you were napping, Missy. Inside bye. So this is, at least you all are also getting to hear how many different variations she's giving me. So because I told her creak later, she's tried walk, she's tried bye, she's tried all the different things here. Walk later, come here. Adora, come. I'm sorry, y'all. I know you're mad. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. We can do pets now. All right. So, and I'll share in a couple slides in our resources where you can find mentorship calls where we do deep dives talking about more advanced concepts, adding names, all this fun stuff as you continue. Yeah, hopefully that was helpful, Julie. Yeah, apologies again with all the background commentary here. At least definitely buttons are working in our household at least. All right, so the other piece of this is target training. you're modeling consistently, you've chosen buttons that are motivating for your learner, but maybe they're not yet pressing independently, that's okay. Target training can help them connect the dots, build confidence, a sense of agency around the board and the buttons. It's also helpful for those who are already pressing. As you add more buttons into the hex tiles, sometimes they can have some mispresses. So working on target training to get their precision to press can be really helpful, whether that's with a paw or a nose. Again, let them develop their style, and then we can also use target training to tweak it and help them be more precise once they do have that style of theirs. So we've got a few different options that Irma has put in the chat for us already. Thank you so much. The first one is a paw targeting tutorial with Alexis and Bunny. This one's great for dogs in particular, and works on teaching them a way to press either with their nose or their paw. If you already have, later Adora, if you already have a high five, a nose touch cue, shake, paw, something like that, you can absolutely just pull the button right out of the hex tile, put it in the palm of your hand, cue them to hit it, and then follow through. Adora. Later. Okay, Adora can go out. Mom walk later. All right, let me just let her out in case she needs to potty. I think this is just because she's bored. And often you will see they like to use their buttons and the board when they are bored and just wanting either your attention or a change of scenery, a change of pace, something like that. That is absolutely still a valid use of the board. It might be a little bit frustrating for us sometimes, but they're communicating a need. She was telling me she was bored. Watching me work and teach, not fun for her. So at least compromise, she can go out, even if we're not going down to the creek yet together. All right, sorry again about that, y'all. So we have our first one with Alexis and Bunny. Again, feel free to shortcut, tell them to just hit the button with whatever cue to touch something if they already have that. If you do take it out of the hex tile, just know that once it's back in the hex tile, they might look at it like, whoa, you're asking me to do something different because the picture has changed. That's totally normal. Progress with training, with life, everything in general, right, is rarely linear. So it's okay if, last night they walked over, had a beautiful independent press and expected you to follow through, and then the next day they walk up to the board and they look like they have no idea what it's doing there. That's totally normal, totally fine, absolutely a part of learning. Doesn't mean, again, that they're less intelligent, that you've done anything wrong. When in doubt, help them out. If you see them thinking about it, staring a button down, batting near it, tapping near it, hitting it, just not hard enough to activate, particularly with cats, you'll see a lot of batting, which makes sense. That's how they interact with things. So if you're seeing a lot of that, I can make my screen a little bigger here for you. So if you're seeing a lot of that, when in doubt, help them out. So they're trying to activate it. If you can time it and you activate the button at the same time, that will really help give them tactile feedback. They'll get to see it light up. If it's a connect button, they'll get to feel it vibrate if it's one that has the speaker in it. And just that tactile sensation of the button being pressed, particularly if you can time it for while they're trying to activate it on their own. If you can hit the button then, that can connect the dots really well for them. Notice though, I said press the button. Ideally, I don't want you pressing their paw, their elbow, their shoulder, their nose, their face into the button. There's no muscle memory involved for them if we're doing the action for them. So this is where we're supporting, but not forcing them or anything like that. And if your learner is waiting by the back door, they have already told you very clearly they want to go outside, particularly if just waiting by the back door is enough to get them to get you up to let them out. Still honor that. We don't want it to turn into, hey, these buttons are here now. Suddenly I'm going to ignore all the things that have worked in the past. So if them waiting by the door again is enough of a cue in the past for you to just go ahead and let them out, either just go ahead and let them out like usual, or at the very most, what I will do is I will go over to the board, hit outside, and then go out together. But I'm not in that moment asking them to come over. We're not turning it into a training session in that moment. I'm not forcing them or asking them even to press the button because they've already told me with their body language what it is that they want. Once they're more advanced, I can ask for clarification with the board. I can ask follow-up questions. But if they've already communicated something to me, I'm going to honor it. And an example that I like to use that I still think about, being in elementary school, needing to be excused from the classroom pretty urgently, being called on, can I be excused? And the teacher being like, you mean, may you be excused? That to me was not the moment to be working on that. I had an urgent need to go. I communicated that need very effectively still. That's not the time. That's the time to say like, yes, you may be excused, right? That's the kind of feeling that I want us to have with the buttons, with our learners. I want them to still be heard and understood, however they're communicating with us. All right, let me share my screen again here. We'll dive into some additional resources. So, again, there's two others that are linked here that are more cat specific that are working on getting the weight shift to press. That is so helpful for the cats. All right. So again, be on the lookout for a follow-up email, but also this community.fluent.pet has a wealth of resources for you all. There's more than 4.5 years of people's experiences. When you look under the welcome area, we've got Start Button Teaching. This is where you can find lots of really in-depth info. If you're the type that wants to read step by step, this is for you. We've also got announcements to keep an eye on and community events, and FAQs. Again, if you're somebody who loves to dive in, so much info. If you go far enough back, you'll find tons of questions from me when I was getting my start as well. We've all been there. So please take advantage of all the great info in here. Under events, the Button Bootcamp section here, just for folks like you that have attended bootcamp. You can attend another bootcamp if that would be helpful. If you'd like a family member to attend, send them over. We'd love to help out. We've got upcoming ones on the schedule here. You can also switch to past and then find recordings as well, including today's once we finish up. Under events, mentorship calls. This, I am so thrilled, is back. These are free calls hosted by different guides, sometimes myself. We've got one coming up on Friday for helping pick my first words. So if anybody is looking for more assistance with that, let today synthesize a little bit. Maybe you're still debating between a few. Please come to this event with Jennifer, who has also taught bootcamp and is one of our guides, had so much great success with her learner, Phoebe. So we're getting more on the schedule, but be on the lookout for mentorship calls as well. And we love, as you're probably finding, talking about buttons. We can talk about buttons all day. So yeah, please take advantage of these here for you. Under the resources tab, this is where we've got the Learning Center linked, Alexis and Bunny's paw targeting tutorial, cat specific one, another cat specific one, a soundboard planning tool if you're the type that wants to have a layout already ready to go, a plan, feel free to use this template. Lots of really great examples as well from different instructors and guides all throughout here. Discussion, similar thing. This is where you can ask really in-depth questions, share videos, that sort of thing. Chat, if you have a quick question, something like that. And then one last thing I want to show you. So again, this discussion area, tons of great info. But if you're looking to be inspired, if you want to get an idea of what different soundboards can look like, Show Off Your Soundboard has some great options. So here's that soundboard planning tool that I mentioned that you can find under resources. Feel free to utilize that. Just let your learner be the guide and know that we might have a plan, but sometimes life events or the interest of our learner, whatever else might mean that we add a different button first or things, different than the order that we had originally decided. So just stay flexible is my point there. But I love getting inspired by the different examples of soundboards. Here's a really cool vertical mount, but instead of just being wall mount, notice how it's at an angle so that it'll be even easier for the learner to press. I love this. I want to see it in action. I need to look up videos of them using it. You can do like islands, small islands like this with walkways in between. That's how ours is set up. Behind me here, here's a nice wall mount option. When you're thinking about where to put your soundboard and buttons, the more centrally located tends to be best. Somewhere that's easy for you to get to model, easy for your learner to get to press, and then for you to say yes and follow through to everything. So that's why this area here tends to be good, because I've got the back door right there, kitchen. The only thing that wasn't already naturally located over here were toys. So I just wound up bringing a whole bunch over here so that I could very quickly and easily follow through for my learners. But especially when your soundboard is small, if you only have 1, 2, 3 hex tiles to start off, depending on how you group things, just bringing it to different rooms can be helpful too while you're waiting to decide. Or say you work, from home in an office a good portion of the day, but then the rest of the time you're out of the office, maybe just bringing it, depending on where your learner is, either with you, whatever. If you have 2 different floors, it's up to you. Do you just have one main soundboard? Do you have a small soundboard that references the main board on the different floor? Do you have, just a hex tile relevant to whatever's upstairs on an upstairs board? Totally up to you how your day ebbs and flows, where your learner is spending time with you. It doesn't have to be right in the middle of the floor, though, the way a lot of us have it. Tucked out of the way Sasha's board is here, can be really helpful if you're worried about tripping, being underfoot, saving space. What I really love about this corner layout is that Sasha's left enough room for their learner to still walk behind the board and stand in the corner and press. A lot of our learners don't like to not be able to make eye contact or not be able to watch us. They want to know that we're reacting, that we've heard them, that we're getting ready to respond. So having them be able to watch us while they're pressing seems to be important to a lot of learners. Not all of them, but until you know your learner's pressing style, kind of thinking about centrally located or a way for them to at least watch you while pressing tends to be really important. All right. Got a couple more things to share. Thank you, Irma, for adding all of those links. All right, so in addition to all the free resources that I just shared, we also have the Let's Get Them Pressing course. This is a 4-week cohort-based class. It's taught by Alexis with Bunny and Diane of NeuroDog Training. There is a 25% off coupon code that does not expire if you're interested. Irma went ahead and added that in the chat already. Thank you so much. But lots of great info that we cover. There's live coaching in addition to asynchronous materials. We would love to have you. I contributed to the cat materials as well. And then if you are looking to expand your buttons, hex tiles, anything like that, you're realizing you want to have more ready to go, we do have a 15% off coupon code that's good for everything at FluentPet, including the Connect systems. So that's in the chat as well. And then if you have any feedback for us, always looking to improve, would love to hear from you. We've got that added in the chat as well. All right, y'all. So do you have additional questions for me? How can I help make you feel confident about getting started or continuing, depending on where you're at with your learners? And if you're good for now, no worries. That's why we have our mentorship calls, the forum. You can always attend a future boot camp. You can always send us a DM. Here, in whatever capacity you would like us to be. Thank you, Irma. I don't see any typing or hands come up yet. I'm going to wait another moment just because I'm not trying to cut anybody off here. But I so appreciate everybody's time, your focus, your energy today, your patience with my very enthusiastic pressers. They really want to go out on this beautiful day today here and get down to the creek. So I will oblige them here. Thank you so much again, though, for just even being willing to learn something new, to embark on this journey with your learners. This is a really exciting forefront of communication, I feel like. So I'm thrilled that you all are diving in, taking this leap with your learners. Again, please don't be strangers. We're here to help both now and going forward. Thanks so much, y'all. Yeah, hopefully you got what you needed out of it today. Yeah. Thanks so much, y'all. Best of luck, but again, you don't need luck. You know your learner and your household best. You've got this. We'll be on the lookout at future events for you all. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.